The stars burned cold in the darkness of space as Commander Taman stood on the bridge of his warship. His green scales caught the light from the main display screen, which showed something terrible. Another colony had gone silent. That made 12 worlds in just 3 weeks. Taman was a Keltharian, a species that looked like walking lizards with intelligent eyes. He had fought in many battles during his 40 years of service to the Galactic Union, but he had never seen anything like this. The enemy came from nowhere, destroyed everything, and left only empty planets behind. "Commander, we're receiving a distress call from Outpost 7, his communications officer said. Her voice shook with fear. "Put it on screen," Taman ordered. The image that appeared made even his cold blood run colder. The outpost was under attack by creatures that looked like giant insects. They were everywhere, covering the walls and floors like a living carpet. The soldiers defending the outpost fired their weapons, but for every creature they killed, 10 more appeared. "They're called the Vral," said Captain Hyunwoo, who stood beside Taman. Hyunwoo was young for a ship captain, but he was brave and smart. His blue skin marked him as a Thessian, a species that lived in water on their home world. They're a hive mind. They think as one, act as one. Every defeat teaches them. Every victory makes them stronger. The screen went dark as Outpost 7 fell silent forever. Taman closed his eyes for a moment. How could they fight an enemy that never stopped learning? The Galactic Union had 847 different species and thousands of worlds. They had kept peace for 12,000 years, but now that peace was breaking like glass under a hammer. "Set course for Centris Prime," Taman said. "The Council needs to hear this." 3 days later, Taman stood in the Great Council chamber on the capital world. The room was huge, with seats for representatives from hundreds of species. Some breathed air, others needed water tanks. Some were small as children, others tall as trees. But today they all shared the same expression. Fear. "We need new strategies," Taman told the council. "The Vral adapt to everything we try. Our weapons, our tactics, nothing works for long. What do you suggest, Commander?" asked Councillor Vorn. He was a slug-like creature who spoke slowly and carefully. Before Taman could answer, Ambassador Jiwan stood up. She was also Thessian, like Captain Hyunwoo, with the same blue skin and large dark eyes. But where Hyunwoo was a warrior, Jiwan was a scholar. She studied ancient history and old languages that nobody spoke anymore. "I have a suggestion," Jiwan said, "but many of you will think I'm crazy." "We're listening," said the council leader. Jiwan touched a control and a hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed a star map with one system marked in red. "This is the Sol system. According to ancient texts, it was home to a species called humans." Several council members laughed. One shouted, "Those are just stories we tell children." But Jiwan continued, "The stories say humans were warriors unlike any other species. They came from a death world, a planet so dangerous that surviving there made them incredibly strong. They could heal from terrible wounds. They could fight for days without rest. They had something called adrenaline that made them fearless in battle." "Fairy tales," Councillor Vorn said. "Humans never existed." "Then explain these," Jiwan said. More holograms appeared, showing ancient documents and star charts. "I've spent 20 years studying human history. They were real. They were part of the Union 8,000 years ago. Then they disappeared. Even if they existed once, they're surely dead now," another council member said. "Maybe," Jiwan admitted. "But what if they're not? What if we could find them? We need help. The Vral will destroy everything unless we do something different." The council chamber erupted in argument. Some thought Jiwan was wasting time. Others were curious. Taman listened to all of them and made his decision. "I'll go," he said loudly. The chamber grew quiet. "Give me one ship and a small crew. I'll investigate these coordinates. If there's even a small chance that humans exist and can help us, we have to try." The council leader looked around the room, then nodded. "Very well. Captain Hyunwoo, you will provide transportation. Ambassador Jiwan, you will accompany them as an expert. But understand this, we can only spare you for 2 weeks. After that, you must return with or without answers." 2 days later, the warship Eternal Vigil jumped into hyperspace. Its destination was the Sol system, a place that existed only in old stories and ancient maps. Captain Hyunwoo guided his ship through the strange currents of hyperspace, while Taman studied everything Jiwan had gathered about humans. The more he read, the more disturbed he became. If the stories were true, Humans were terrifying. They came from a planet with extreme weather, deadly animals, and plants that could kill with a touch. Most species evolved on peaceful worlds. But Earth, the human homeworld, was different. Everything there tried to kill everything else, and humans had climbed to the top of that deadly pyramid. They ate meat, Taman said, reading one text. They were predators. Most species are herbivores or eat synthetic food, Jiwan agreed. But humans hunted other animals. They had forward-facing eyes like all predators, and they could run for incredible distances. They would chase prey until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. Why would the Union work with such creatures? Taman asked. Because they were also kind, Jiwan said softly. The texts say humans would risk their lives to save others. They formed strong bonds with different species. They explored dangerous places so others wouldn't have to. They were complicated, Commander, capable of great violence and great compassion. If they were so wonderful, why did they disappear? Jiwan's face grew sad. That part of the history is unclear. The records are incomplete. But I think something terrible happened. Something the Union wants to forget. 3 days into the journey, alarms screamed through the ship. "For all ships approaching," shouted the sensor officer. "Battle stations," Captain Hyunwoo ordered. 2 Vral bioships appeared from nowhere, their organic hulls pulsing with sick light. They were smaller than the Eternal Vigil, but faster. They fired weapons that looked like living things, creatures that attached to the ship's hull and began eating through it. "Return fire," Hyunwoo commanded. The Eternal Vigil's weapons hit the Vral ships, but they seemed to absorb the damage and keep coming. Taman watched the battle with growing frustration. Every shot they learned from, every tactic they countered. "We can't win this fight," he said. "Jump to hyperspace." "Now coordinates?" Hyunwoo asked. "The Sol system. It's our only chance." The ship jumped, leaving the Vral behind. But everyone knew the truth. The Vral would follow. They always did. 5 days later, they arrived at the coordinates Jiwan had provided. The crew gathered around the main display screen, barely breathing. The sensors swept the system looking for anything. "I'm detecting a planet," the sensor officer said slowly. "Third from the star. It matches the descriptions in the ancient texts." "Earth," Jiwan whispered. The planet appeared on screen. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. Blue oceans covered most of its surface. Green and brown continents sat between the waters. White clouds swirled in patterns. But there were also scars. Dark spots that might be the remains of ancient cities. Strange atmospheric readings that suggested old weapons had been used. "Life signs?" Taman asked. "Scanning." "Yes, I'm detecting power sources underground. Lots of them. And... wait. Something's launching from the surface." Everyone watched as small craft rose from Earth. They were strange-looking, with metal hulls and primitive engines. They shouldn't be able to reach space, but they did, and they were heading straight for the Eternal Vigil. "Are they attacking?" Captain Hyunwoo asked. "Unknown," the weapons officer replied. "They're not firing, but they're definitely coming toward us." Taman counted the approaching ships. 20 of them, small but moving in perfect formation. "Military formation. Open all communication channels," he ordered. "Let them know we come in peace." They sent messages in every language the Union knew. But there was no response. The human ships kept coming, growing closer with each passing second. Then, finally, a transmission broke through. The words were in a language that sounded like ancient Galactic Standard, but different, changed by thousands of years. The computer struggled to translate. A face appeared on screen. It was like nothing Taman had ever seen. Smooth skin without scales, hair growing from the top of its head. 2 eyes that looked forward like a predator's. This was a human, a real human, and it was speaking directly to them. Ambassador Jiwan's hands shook as she worked her controls, trying to understand the transmission. I think they're asking who we are," she said, "and why we've come to their world." Taman took a deep breath. This was the moment. Either the legends were true and humans could help them, or they were just another species struggling to survive. "Tell them," Taman said, "that we are the Galactic Union, and we need their help. Tell them the galaxy is at war and we're losing." Jiwan translated as best she could. They sent the message and waited. The human ships continued their approach. But now, slowly, they were changing formation, moving from a battle pattern to something else, something that looked almost like an escort. "I think," Captain Hyunwoo said quietly, "they're going to let us land." as the eternal vigil descended toward Earth. The landing site was in the middle of what had once been a great city. Now only broken towers and crumbling roads remained, covered by plants that had grown wild for thousands of years. The eternal vigil touched down gently, its engines kicking up clouds of dust that had not been disturbed in centuries. Commander Taman stood at the airlock with Captain Hunwoo and Ambassador Ji-won. All three wore breathing masks, unsure if Earth's air was safe for them. Through the ship's cameras, they could see the human ships landing in a circle around them. Ramps extended from the human craft and figures began to emerge. They're wearing armor, Hyunwoo observed, and carrying weapons. Taman nodded. The humans moved like soldiers with discipline and precision. Even from a distance, he could see how different they were from any species he had ever met. They stood upright on two legs with 2 arms and 2 eyes. Simple body structure, but the way they moved suggested hidden strength. "We should go out to meet them," Ji-won said. Her voice was excited despite her nervousness. "This is history happening right now." They opened the airlock and stepped onto Earth's surface. The gravity was strong, heavier than most Union worlds. The air smelled of growing things and old metal. Taman took a careful breath through his mask. It tasted strange but not dangerous. The humans approached slowly. One walked in front of the others, clearly their leader. He was tall and broad, with dark hair cut very short. His face showed many lines, marks of age and stress. His eyes were hard, the eyes of someone who had seen too much war. He stopped 3 meters away and spoke in that ancient language. Ji-won quickly translated through her device. "He says his name is Colonel Dae-hyun. He commands Earth's defense forces. He wants to know if we are friend or enemy." Taman stepped forward and bowed, a sign of respect that most species understood. "Tell him we are friends. Tell him we come asking for help." As Ji-won translated, another human joined Colonel Dae-hyun. This one was a woman with long dark hair and kind eyes. She carried no weapons, only a small computer device. She spoke quickly, pointing at Ji-won's translator. "She's a linguist," Ji-won said, suddenly excited. "Her name is Dr. Minji. She studies old languages. She says she's been listening to space transmissions for years, trying to learn Galactic Standard. She knew someone would come eventually." Dr. Minji and Ji-won began working together, their computers connecting and sharing data. Within minutes, the translation became clearer. Words flowed more easily. Colonel Dae-hyun relaxed slightly, though his hand stayed near his weapon. "Why are you here?" Dae-hyun asked through the better translation. "Earth was forgotten long ago. Left to die. Why come back now?" Taman chose his words carefully. "We didn't know Earth still existed. The records say humans disappeared 8,000 years ago, but the galaxy is in danger. An enemy called the Vral is destroying everything. We're losing the war. Ancient texts say humans were great warriors. We came to see if the legends were true." Dae-hyun's face grew dark with anger. "So you remember us only when you need something? Where were you when Earth was burning? When our cities turned to ash? When billions died?" "I don't know," Taman admitted. "That history was lost. But I promise you I will find out what happened, and I will make sure everyone knows the truth." A younger human stepped forward wearing the flight suit of a pilot. His name was Lieutenant Junho, and his eyes were bright with curiosity. He spoke quickly to Dr. Minji, who translated. "He wants to know what the Vral are like. What makes them so dangerous?" Captain Hyunwoo pulled up a hologram, showing images of the Vral and their attacks. The humans watched in silence. Taman saw their expressions change from curiosity to understanding. These were people who knew war. They recognized what they were seeing. "They're a hive mind," Hyunwoo explained. "They share one consciousness across millions of bodies. Kill one and the others learn from it. They adapt to everything. Nothing stops them for long." "How many worlds have they taken?" Dae-hyun asked. 12 so far, but they're getting faster, stronger. We estimate they'll reach the core worlds in 6 months. After that, Taman didn't finish. He didn't need to. Dr. Minji spoke urgently to Dae-hyun. They argued back and forth while the Union visitors waited. Finally, Dae-hyun turned back to them. "Come with us," he said. "There are things you need to see, things you need to understand before we decide anything." The humans led them down into the ruins of the old city. Beneath the surface, hidden from sight, was another world. Massive doors opened to reveal tunnels that stretched for kilometers. Lights flickered on as they descended, powered by generators that had run for thousands of years. "When Earth fell, we didn't die," Dr. Minji explained as they walked. "We went underground, built cities in caves and old bunkers. We've been here all this time, surviving, waiting. The tunnel opened into a vast cavern that had been turned into a city. Buildings rose from the cavern floor, connected by bridges and roads. Thousands of people moved through the streets. Children played in parks lit by artificial suns. It was beautiful and sad at the same time, a whole civilization hidden from the stars. How many? Jiwon asked quietly. Across all our underground cities, maybe 5 million people, Daehyun said. That's all that's left of humanity. We were once billions. They brought the Union visitors to a building that served as a military headquarters. Inside, holographic displays showed maps of Earth's surface and defenses. Old weapons systems kept running through careful maintenance and desperate ingenuity. An old woman was waiting for them. Her hair was white with age, but her eyes were sharp and clear. She wore the uniform of a high-ranking officer. This is General Yoonji, Daehyun said. She leads all of Earth's military forces. General Yoonji studied the visitors with intense focus. Colonel Daehyun tells me you want our help. Why should we care what happens to the galaxy? The galaxy forgot about us. Jiwon stepped forward. Because what happened to Earth was wrong. I've studied the history. I know there was a betrayal. Someone in the Union gave your enemies the weapons to destroy you. Someone wanted humanity gone. That was evil, and those responsible should be punished. But they're all dead now, General Yoonji said. Thousands of years dead. How can we have justice against ghosts? You can't, Taemin admitted. But you can have truth. Help us, and I promise I will find out exactly what happened. I will make sure every species in the Union knows what was done to humanity. And I will make sure it never happens again. Pretty promises, General Yoonji said. But words don't bring back the dead. Lieutenant Junho spoke up suddenly, surprising everyone. Dr. Minji translated his words. The dead are gone, but the living remain. If the Vral keep spreading, they'll find Earth eventually. We can't hide forever. Better to fight them out there than wait for them to come here. Daehyun looked at the young pilot with something like pride. You want to fight? I want to protect our home, Junho replied. And maybe, if we help save other worlds, we can finally have a home among the stars again. Not hidden underground like frightened animals. General Yoonji was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. The boy has wisdom, very well. I'll send 3 ships and their crews. But understand this. If you betray us again, if you use us and throw us away, humanity will remember. And we will have our revenge. I understand, Taemin said. Over the next 2 days, they prepared for departure. The humans brought out ships that had been sealed in underground hangars for centuries. The vessels were old, built with technology that seemed primitive compared to Union standards. But they had been maintained with obsessive care, and they still worked. Jiwon spent hours with Dr. Minji, learning about human history and culture. She learned that humans formed deep emotional bonds, that they valued things like loyalty and honor above practical concerns. She learned that they wrote poetry and music, that they created art even in their darkest times. We are not just warriors, Dr. Minji said. That's what the legends forgot. Yes, we can fight, but we also love, dream, and hope. We're complicated creatures. Captain Hyunwoo worked with the human engineers trying to understand their ships. He was impressed by their ingenuity. The humans had taken old technology and modified it in creative ways. Their weapons were simple kinetic railguns and explosive missiles, but they were reliable and powerful. No energy shields? Hyunwoo asked. We never developed them, explained a human engineer. We focused on armor instead. Heavy, dense metal that can take a beating. Our ships aren't elegant, but they're tough. Lieutenant Junho showed Hyunwoo his fighter craft. It was small and angular, covered in scratches and repair marks. This belonged to my grandfather, Junho said through Dr. Minji's translation. He flew it in the last war. Now it's mine. You honor your ancestors, Hyunwoo observed. Always, Junho replied. They survived so we could live. The least we can do is remember them. On the morning of departure, the entire underground city gathered to see them off. General Yoonji gave a speech, her voice echoing through the cavern. You 3 ships carry Earth's hopes with you. You represent all of humanity. Fight well, fight smart, and come home alive. That's an order. The 3 human ships were named Indomitable, Phoenix, and Shadow. The Indomitable was a heavy battleship, slow but incredibly strong. The Phoenix was a carrier that held Lieutenant Junho's fighter squadron. The Shadow was a small stealth ship designed for reconnaissance. The garrison line was the last major defensive position before the Union's core worlds. When the four ships arrived from hyperspace, they found a scene of desperate preparation. 36 Union warships floated in formation, their weapons pointed at empty space where the Vral would soon appear. But beyond them, filling the darkness like stars, were more than 300 Vral bioships. By the old gods, Captain Hyunwoo whispered. There are so many. Commander Taemin stood frozen, calculating odds that grew worse with every passing second. The Union fleet was about to be destroyed, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The human ships are hailing us, the communications officer said. Colonel Daehyun's face appeared on screen. Behind him, the bridge of the Indomitable was busy with activity. We see them. What's your battle plan? Maintain formation and engage at maximum range, Taemin replied. Use energy weapons to thin their numbers before they close distance. Daehyun frowned. That won't work. They'll adapt to your weapons within minutes. You need to change tactics constantly. With respect, Colonel, you haven't fought them before, Taemin said, trying to keep frustration from his voice. We know what we're doing. Fine, Daehyun said. But when your plan fails, follow our lead. The connection ended. Taemin turned to Hyunwoo. Human arrogance. Their ships are hundreds of years old. What do they think they can do that we can't? Before Hyunwoo could answer, alarms screamed throughout the fleet. The Vral were attacking. The bioships moved like a swarm of insects, their formations chaotic but somehow coordinated. They fired weapons that looked like living projectiles, creatures that flew through space and attached themselves to Union ships. Where they hit, the organic matter began eating through hulls and shields. The Union fleet returned fire with precision. Bright beams of energy lanced through space, cutting Vral ships in half. For a moment, it seemed like the defense would hold. Then the Vral adapted. Their ships began moving differently, dodging shots that should have hit them. Their hulls changed color and texture, becoming more resistant to energy weapons. Within minutes, the Union's advantage was gone. They're learning too fast. Hyunwoo shouted. Taemin watched his tactical display with growing horror. Union ships were falling back, taking heavy damage. Some were already drifting, their crews dead or dying. The Vral pressed forward relentlessly. Then the human ships moved. Instead of maintaining the tight formation the Union used, the Indomitable, Phoenix, and Shadow broke apart. They flew in ways that seemed random, almost chaotic. But as Taemin watched, he realized there was pattern to their madness. The Indomitable charged straight into the Vral formation, its heavy armor absorbing hits that would have destroyed a Union ship. Its weapons fired continuously, not elegant energy beams, but solid metal projectiles that punched through Vral hulls with brutal efficiency. The Phoenix released Lieutenant Junho's fighter squadron. 20 small craft burst from the carrier like angry insects. They flew through the debris field using destroyed ships as cover. Their small size and erratic movements made them nearly impossible to target. The Shadow simply disappeared from sensors. Its stealth systems more advanced than anything the Union had seen. What are they doing? Hyunwoo asked, amazed and confused. They're hunting, Ji-won said quietly. Look at them. They're not fighting like a fleet. They're fighting like predators. She was right. The human ships didn't try to maintain formations or follow standard tactics. Each captain made independent decisions, adapting to the battle moment by moment. When the Vral learned to dodge one type of attack, the humans switched to something completely different. Lieutenant Junho's fighter squadron dove through the Vral formation, firing missiles that exploded in bright flashes. But these weren't normal explosives. Taemin's sensors showed they were electromagnetic pulses disrupting the Vral's coordination. Clever, Taemin admitted. The Vral share a hive mind, disrupt their communications, and they become confused. More Vral ships closed on the Indomitable. They fired boarding pods, organic shells carrying Vral warriors designed to breach hulls and slaughter crews. This was where the Vral were most dangerous. In close combat, they were nearly unstoppable. The pods latched onto the Indomitable's hull and burned through the armor. Dozens of Vral warriors poured into the human ship, their chitinous bodies gleaming under the emergency lights. They had been bred for war, with razor mandibles and armored shells that resisted energy weapons. Taemin pulled up the internal camera feeds, expecting to see the human crew overwhelmed within seconds. What he saw instead made his blood run cold. The human Marines were waiting. They fought in teams, covering each other with disciplined fire. Their weapons were simple ballistic rifles that fired metal bullets, but the bullets tore through Vral armor effectively. When the Vral got close, the humans used knives and explosive charges, fighting with a savagery that matched the enemy. A Vral warrior lunged at a human marine, its mandibles wide. The marine dodged faster than Taemin thought possible and drove a knife into the creature's nerve cluster. The Vral collapsed and the marine was already moving to the next target. "They're not afraid," Hyunwoo said, watching the same feeds. "They should be terrified, but they're not." "They're humans," Jiwon said. "Fear doesn't control them the way it controls us. They feel it, but they push through it." The battle raged for 2 hours. Union ships maintained their distance, providing support fire. But the real fighting was done by the 3 human vessels. They were everywhere, striking from unexpected angles, using tactics that made no sense until they worked. The shadow reappeared suddenly, right next to a massive Vral carrier. It fired a spread of missiles at point-blank range, then jumped away before the carrier could respond. The carrier broke apart, its organic structure unable to survive the damage. But the Vral were learning. They concentrated their fire on the Indomitable, recognizing it as the most dangerous threat. Hundreds of bioships surrounded the human battleship, overwhelming its defenses. "The Indomitable is taking critical damage," Taemin's tactical officer reported. "Hull breaches on multiple decks. They're venting atmosphere." On screen, Taemin could see Colonel Daehyun's face. The human commander was covered in blood, his armor cracked, but his expression was calm, almost peaceful. "All ships, this is Daehyun," the colonel transmitted. "We're finished. But we're not done. Watch and learn." "What is he doing?" Hyunwoo asked. Taemin realized the truth a moment before it happened. "He's going to ram them." The Indomitable's engines fired at full power. The massive ship accelerated toward the largest Vral carrier, ignoring the weapons fire that tore through its hull. Escape pods launched from the dying ship, carrying survivors to safety. "Pull back," Taemin ordered his fleet. "Everyone get clear." The Indomitable hit the Vral carrier at full speed. The collision was silent in the vacuum of space, but the explosion that followed lit up the darkness like a new sun. The carrier broke apart, taking a dozen nearby Vral ships with it. The shockwave scattered the enemy formation, creating chaos where there had been order. Lieutenant Junho's voice came over the radio, speaking quickly in Korean. Dr. Minji translated from the Phoenix. He says the colonel created an opening. All ships attack now while the Vral are confused. The Union fleet surged forward. With the Vral coordination disrupted and their formation broken, the battle turned. Ship after ship fell to Union weapons. The remaining Vral began to retreat, jumping to hyperspace in small groups. When the fighting finally ended, the silence felt strange. Taemin looked at his tactical display and counted the cost. 14 Union ships destroyed or heavily damaged, hundreds dead. But they had won. Against impossible odds, they had won, and it was because of the humans. "Get me a damage report on the Phoenix and Shadow," Taemin ordered. Both human ships had survived, though they were battered and scarred. He watched as recovery ships moved through the debris field, searching for survivors. The Indomitable's escape pods were gathered, bringing Colonel Daehyun and his crew to safety. The colonel had survived, though he was badly injured. 3 days later, after the wounded were treated and the dead honored, Commander Taemin visited Colonel Daehyun in the medical bay. The human lay in a bed designed for larger species, looking small and fragile. Bandages covered his chest and arms. "That was either very brave or very stupid," Taemin said. Daehyun smiled weakly. "In war, the difference between brave and stupid is whether you survive. You destroyed your ship. Your home. Ships can be replaced. People can't." Daehyun coughed, wincing with pain. "Did we make a difference?" "You saved us all," Taemin admitted. "Without your sacrifice, the Vral would have broken through. We would have lost." "Good." Daehyun closed his eyes. "Then it was worth it." Taemin stood there for a moment, studying this human who had thrown away his life so easily to save people he barely knew. The legends had been right about human courage, but they had missed something important. Humans weren't just fearless warriors. They were also capable of incredible selflessness. Later that evening, Taemin stood before the combined crews of the surviving ships. Union and human personnel stood together, united by the battle they had survived. He spoke clearly so everyone could hear. "Today we witnessed something I never thought possible. We saw legends become real." 3 months after the battle at the garrison line, the Galactic Union was changing. The victory had bought time, but everyone knew it was temporary. The Vral were regrouping, adapting, preparing for their next attack. Intelligence reports suggested they were gathering near the Dark Rim for a massive assault on Centris Prime, the Union's capital world. Commander Taman stood in the council chamber once again, but this time he was not alone. Beside him stood Colonel Dae-hyun, still healing from his injuries but standing proud in a new uniform. Behind them, Lieutenant Junho and Dr. Minji represented Earth's forces. The council chamber was full. Every species wanted to see the humans who had become legends twice over. But not all the attention was friendly. "I move that humanity be granted full membership in the Galactic Union," Ambassador Jiwan announced. "They have proven their worth in battle. They deserve recognition and rights." Councillor Vorn rose from his seat, his slug-like body quivering with agitation. "I must object. Yes, humans fought well. But look at them. They are predators, warriors. They come from a death world. Can we truly trust such violent creatures?" "We saved your lives," Colonel Dae-hyun said calmly. His translator device made his words clear to everyone. "We lost our ship and many good people to protect you. What more proof do you need?" "That's exactly my point," Vorn replied. "You are too willing to die. Too eager for battle. This makes you dangerous. I propose humans serve as auxiliary forces, not full members. We use their military skill but limit their political power." Angry voices erupted from both human and Union representatives. Taman raised his hand for silence, but the chamber remained chaotic. The unity forged in battle was already beginning to crack. In the back of the chamber, General Kiros watched with satisfaction. He was a mantis-like creature, tall and sharp, who commanded the Union's military forces. He had resented Dae-hyun from the first moment, seeing him as an upstart who threatened his authority. If humans could be kept as subordinates, his power would remain secure. The argument continued for hours. Finally, the council leader called for a vote. The result was mixed. Humanity would be granted membership, but with restrictions. They could contribute military forces, but would have limited voting power. Earth would be recognized, but not given the same rights as older member species. Ambassador Jiwon looked devastated. She had fought so hard for full equality, but Colonel Dae-hyun simply nodded acceptance. "We'll take what we can get," he told her later. "Trust is earned over time. We'll prove ourselves," but privately Dae-hyun was worried. He met with Dr. Minji in his quarters on Centris Prime, where the human delegation had been given rooms. "They're using us," Dae-hyun said, pacing back and forth. "We fight and die, but they keep us in a cage. Like trained animals." "Give them time," Dr. Minji urged. "Many species are afraid. We are different from them, but G1 is working to change minds. Commander Taman supports us." "We have allies. Are they enough?" Dae-hyun asked. Before Dr. Minji could answer, Lieutenant Junho burst into the room. His face was pale. "Colonel, you need to see this. All of you." He pulled up a holographic display showing news reports from across Union space. The humans were famous now. Every world knew their names. Lieutenant Junho was being called the hero of the garrison line. But with fame came scrutiny. Some reports praised human courage and sacrifice. But others spread fear. They showed footage of human Marines fighting Vral borders, emphasizing the violence and brutality. They interviewed species leaders who spoke about the danger of allowing predators into civilized society. "They're turning us into monsters," Junho said quietly. Dr. Minji had spent her free time researching in the Union's archives, trying to understand what had happened to Earth 8,000 years ago. Late one night, she found something that made her blood run cold. Files marked classified, buried deep in old databases that most people had forgotten existed. She brought her discovery to Ambassador Jiwan first, showing her the documents on a secure terminal. "These are records of council meetings from 8,000 years ago," Dr. Minji explained. "Look at this one. A secret vote to provide weapons and strategic information to species hostile to humanity. And look who voted for it." Jiwan read the names and felt sick. Some were ancestors of current council members. Others were species that still held power today. The conspiracy went deep, involving dozens of influential leaders. "They didn't just abandon humanity," Jiwan said. "They actively tried to destroy you. Why?" Dr. Minji asked. "What did we do?" "You were too good at war," Jiwan said softly. "The council was afraid humanity would dominate the Union. So they arranged for your enemies to attack, thinking they would weaken you. But the attacks were too successful. They nearly destroyed your entire species. And now they're doing it again, Dr. Minji realized, keeping us as auxiliaries, making us fight without giving us power. They're using us. What will you do with this information? Jiwan asked. Dr. Minji was silent for a long moment. Nothing, not yet. If I release this now, it will tear the Union apart. Humans will be furious. Other species will choose sides. And while we fight each other, the Vral will destroy us all. You're very wise for someone so young, Jiwan said. I'm learning from good teachers, Dr. Minji replied. While politics churned, the war continued. The Vral had been quiet since their defeat at the garrison line, but intelligence reports were troubling. They had learned from their battles with humans and were adapting their tactics. A human supply convoy was attacked near the outer colonies. When rescue ships arrived, they found something horrifying. The human crew had been infected with Vral bioweapons, viruses designed specifically to target mammalian physiology. The infected humans had been transformed into something else. Their bodies changed into Vral hybrids. They're using us against ourselves, Colonel Dahyun said at the Emergency Military Council. They know our biology now. They can turn us into weapons, General Kiro sneered. Perhaps bringing humans into this war was a mistake. You've given the Vral new ammunition. Daehyun's fist slammed on the table. We've given them nothing. They took our blood and used it against us. That's what war is. If you're too afraid to pay that price, maybe you should surrender now. Before Kiros could respond, Commander Taman intervened. Enough, we don't have time for this. Intelligence has located something important. The Vral Queen Mind, the central consciousness controlling the entire swarm. It's hidden in the Serpent Nebula, inside a massive fortress. Captain Hyunwoo pulled up tactical displays. The fortress has shields that resist our weapons. Sensors show millions of Vral warriors inside. It's a suicide mission. Which is why I'm proposing we send a small strike team, Taman said. A diversionary fleet will draw attention while the team infiltrates and destroys the Queen Mind from within. Who would volunteer for certain death? General Kiros asked mockingly. Lieutenant Junho stood up. I will. The room fell silent. Colonel Daehyun shook his head. Junho, no. You've done enough. With respect, sir, I haven't, Junho said. None of us have. If we destroy the Queen Mind, we end this war. That's worth dying for. Dr. Minji stood as well. I'm going too. You'll need someone who understands Vral biology and communication. This is insane, Kiros protested. It's human, Daehyun said quietly. He looked at Junho and Minji with something like pride and sorrow. I approve the mission. Over the next week, they prepared for the largest military operation in Union history. The entire fleet would converge on the Serpent Nebula, providing a massive diversion while the strike team infiltrated. The Phoenix carrier had been repaired and upgraded. The Shadow stealth ship was ready for infiltration. Captain Hyunwoo volunteered to command the diversionary fleet despite the risks. Commander Taman would join him. Together they would lead hundreds of ships against the Vral main force. The night before the mission, Lieutenant Junho found Dr. Minji on an observation deck looking at the stars. Are you afraid? He asked. Terrified, she admitted, but also determined. We have to do this. I need to tell you something, Junho said. Dr. Minji, I know about the files you found, about what the Council did to humanity. How did you know? Ambassador Jiwan told Colonel Daehyun, he told me. He wanted me to understand what we're really fighting for. What are we fighting for? Dr. Minji asked. A chance, Junho said. A chance to be more than survivors hiding underground. A chance to show the galaxy that humans can be trusted. Even after what was done to us, we can still choose to protect others. Dr. Minji nodded. When this is over, I'll release those files. The truth needs to be known. But not yet. First, we win the war. The day of the mission arrived. The combined fleet gathered at the edge of the Serpent Nebula, a vast cloud of gas and dust that glowed with strange colors. Sensors showed the Vral fortress at the nebula's heart, surrounded by hundreds of bioships. Colonel Daehyun stood on the bridge of the Phoenix, watching the preparations. This was the moment. Everything they had survived, everything they had sacrificed, came down to this single mission. All ships report ready, the communications officer said. Send the signal, Daehyun ordered. Across the fleet, engines ignited. Hundreds of ships began moving toward the nebula, toward the waiting Vral, toward destiny. On the Shadow stealth ship, Lieutenant Junho checked his weapons one last time. Beside him, Dr. Minji reviewed her bioscanners. The Serpent Nebula burned with colors that hurt to look at. Radiation levels were lethal. The gas clouds were thick enough to hide entire fleets. It was perfect terrain for the Vral, and terrible ground for the Union forces approaching it. Commander Taman stood on the bridge of his new flagship, watching the tactical display with growing dread. The Vral had gathered everything they had. More than 800 bioships waited in the nebula, protecting their fortress and their queen mind. "All ships, battle formation," he ordered. His voice was steady despite his fear. "Remember the plan. We buy the strike team time, no matter what it costs." Beside him, Captain Hyunwoo nodded grimly. "My ship is ready, Commander. We'll hold the line." The fleet dropped from hyperspace at the nebula's edge. Immediately, the Vral attacked. Bioships poured from the clouds like angry insects, their organic weapons already firing. The space between the two forces filled with energy and metal and death. Union ships held formation, pouring fire into the approaching swarm. But the Vral had learned. They moved in patterns designed to confuse targeting systems. They used the nebula's radiation to hide their movements. Where they had once been predictable, now they were cunning. "They're adapting faster than before," Hyunwoo reported. "Our tactics aren't working." "Keep fighting," Taman said. "We just need to hold them here. The mission depends on us." While the fleet battled, the Shadow stealth ship slipped through the chaos. Lieutenant Junho sat in the pilot's seat, flying the small craft with skill earned through a lifetime of training. Beside him, Dr. Minji monitored sensors, watching for Vral patrols. Behind them, the strike team prepared their equipment. There were 20 soldiers total, human and Union mixed together. They knew this was a one-way mission. None of them expected to survive. Approaching the fortress, Junho announced. "Engaging cloak." The Shadow became invisible to sensors, using technology that Union scientists had refined specifically for this mission. They slipped past the Vral bioships, through clouds of deadly gas toward the massive structure at the nebula's heart. The fortress was like nothing they had ever seen. It was organic, a living thing grown rather than built. Huge and dark, it pulsed with sick light. Millions of neural tendrils extended from it into space, connecting to Vral ships across light years. This was the center of the hive mind, the source of Vral coordination. Finding a weak point, Dr. Minji said, scanning the structure. "There, an exhaust port where waste gases are expelled. We can enter there." Junho brought the Shadow closer, careful not to disturb the fortress's biological sensors. They docked at the port, sealing their ship to the organic opening. The strike team moved out, entering the fortress through corridors that felt more like intestines than hallways. The air inside was thick and hot, filled with chemicals that made breathing difficult even through their suits. The walls pulsed with life, covered in veins that carried strange fluids. Everything was wrong, alien, designed for creatures that weren't human or anything like human. "Stay together," ordered Sergeant Kyung, the team leader. She was a veteran soldier, scarred and tough. "Watch for patrol drones." They moved deeper into the fortress, following Dr. Minji's maps. She had studied Vral biology for months, understanding how their structures worked. The path to the Queen Mind led through chambers filled with developing Vral warriors, and corridors lined with organic weapon systems. A patrol of Vral drones appeared from a side passage. The soldiers opened fire immediately, their weapons loud in the enclosed space. The Vral fell, but their death screams echoed through the fortress. More would be coming. "Run!" Sergeant Kyung shouted. They ran through the nightmare corridors, fighting Vral warriors at every turn. The team lost people. First 2 soldiers, then 3 more, then another. Each loss hurt, but they couldn't stop. The mission was everything. Outside, the diversionary fleet was dying. Commander Taman watched as ship after ship fell to Vral attacks. The Phoenix carrier was burning, its hull breached in a dozen places. Captain Hyunwoo's flagship had lost shields and was taking direct hits. "Sir, we've lost 40% of the fleet," the tactical officer reported. "We can't hold much longer." "We hold until the mission is complete," Taman said firmly. "That's an order." General Kiros appeared on the communication screen from his ship at the rear of the formation. "This is insanity. We're being slaughtered. We should retreat while we still can." "If we retreat, the strike team dies," Taman replied. "And so does our last chance to win this war. Better to lose the strike team than the entire fleet." "Then you're a coward," Taman said quietly. "All ships continue the attack. For humanity, for the Union, for everyone we've lost." The fleet surged forward, accepting terrible losses to draw the Vral away from their fortress. It was the bravest thing Taman had ever seen and the most painful. Deep inside the fortress, the strike team reached the Queen Mind's chamber. The room was vast, stretching beyond sight. At its center floated a massive organism pulsing with terrible beauty. This was the consciousness that directed billions of Vral across countless worlds. Lieutenant Junho and Dr. Minji stood at the entrance with 5 surviving soldiers. Half their team was dead. The rest would die here, they all knew it. "Plant the explosives," Junho ordered. "We have 10 minutes." But as the soldiers moved forward, the Queen Mind stirred. And then, impossibly, it spoke. Not in words, but in thoughts that appeared in their minds like terrible visions. Dr. Minji gasped as understanding flooded through her. "Wait, stop! I'm receiving communication from the Queen Mind. It's trying to trick us," Sergeant Kyung said. "No," Dr. Minji said, tears running down her face. "It's trying to explain. The Vral aren't invaders. They're refugees." Through the mental connection, the Queen Mind showed them its truth. The Vral came from another dimension, fleeing from predators that fed on hive minds. They had escaped to this universe searching for safety, but found only war. Every world they took was out of desperation, not cruelty. They were driven by fear and the need to survive. "It's asking for mercy," Dr. Minji translated, "asking for sanctuary instead of death." Lieutenant Junho looked at the explosives, then at the Queen Mind, then at Dr. Minji. His finger hovered over the detonator. "We can negotiate," Dr. Minji urged. "Find another way. Offer them empty worlds where they can live without threatening others." "And if they betray us?" Junho asked. "Then we've lost nothing. We would have died here anyway." Junho made his decision. He began speaking, knowing the Queen Mind could understand intent if not words. He offered peace. He offered hope. He offered a chance for both species to survive. The Queen Mind considered for a long moment. Then Vral warriors poured into the chamber, hundreds of them surrounding the humans. Junho raised his weapon, ready to die fighting, but the warriors didn't attack. They stood still, waiting. The Queen Mind sent one final message to Dr. Minji. It showed her visions of Vral children, of their lost home world, of endless running and fear. And then it showed her a terrible truth. The things hunting the Vral were still coming. They had followed the Vral to this dimension. They would arrive soon, and they would consume everything. "We need to warn the Union," Dr. Minji said desperately. "There's something worse coming." Lieutenant Junho tried to activate his communicator, but the fortress walls blocked the signal. They needed to get out, to escape, to tell everyone what they had learned. Then the fortress shook. Explosions rocked the structure. Dr. Minji looked at the charges they had planted and felt horror. "The timer? Someone must have activated it by accident during the fighting." "How long?" Junho demanded. 2 minutes, run," Sergeant Kyung shouted. They ran back through the corridors they had entered, the surviving soldiers and Dr. Minji racing for their lives. Lieutenant Junho stayed behind for a moment, looking at the Queen Mind. "I'm sorry," he said. "I wanted to save you." He turned to run, but Dr. Minji was in trouble. A piece of the collapsing fortress had fallen across the corridor, crushing her legs. She screamed in pain, trapped. Junho ran to her, trying to lift the debris, but it was too heavy. The fortress was coming apart around them. "Leave me," Dr. Minji gasped. "You have to warn them. Tell them about the things that hunt the Vral. Tell them the war isn't over. I won't leave you. Promise me." Dr. Minji grabbed his arm with desperate strength. "Promise you'll tell them what we learned. That there are no real villains in this war. Just survivors fighting to live." Tears streamed down Junho's face. "I promise. Then go." Sergeant Kyung pulled him away. They ran as the fortress exploded behind them, killing Dr. Minji and the Queen Mind and millions of Vral. The explosion sent shockwaves through the Vral fleet. Without the Queen Mind's coordination, the bioships began acting confused. Some fled into deep space. Others simply stopped fighting, drifting like dead things. The hive mind had been shattered. Commander Taman saw his opportunity. "All ships, advance. Drive them back." The Union fleet, bloody and battered, surged forward. They scattered the disorganized Vral forces, destroying some, driving away others. The battle turned into a rout. But the victory felt hollow. Taman had lost so many ships, so many people, and somewhere in the exploding fortress, brave soldiers had died to make this possible. The shadow limped out of the nebula, its hull damaged and scarred. Lieutenant Junho sat in the pilot's seat.